Welcome to the Wildlife Photo Show. I'm Russell Graves, and in today's episode we're going to talk about something that's really important: the fundamentals of photography. I know it sounds pretty basic, but if you get this right, it's going to elevate your game to the next level in no time. So stay with me through the entire video, and at the end I've got a special gift for you. So let's go ahead and get started. When I talk about the fundamentals of photography, it's really in the same vein that I talk about the fundamentals of anything. Back when I was in school, I played baseball in high school, and catching a ball and throwing a ball and hitting a ball, it's all kind of, there's some fundamental skills that you have to learn, and those skills become repeatable over time to help you be more and more consistent. And so that's what I'm talking about in the vein of fundamentals for photography. There's some important skills that if you learn them, it helps your photography become more repeatable, and that repeatability then becomes more and more consistent, and the more consistent you become, the better your photography gets over time. And who doesn't want to be better at photography? That's why we all get in the game, for our constant need to want to improve and experience the great outdoors. The first and perhaps most important fundamental of photography is just understanding exposure. You know, you've heard a lot of people talk about the exposure triangle, which is the interplay of the ISO, the aperture, and the shutter speed, and how if you change one, another one necessarily has to change to compensate. To put that simply is, every time you point your camera at a scene, the camera is going to make internal calculations based on what it thinks the shutter speed and aperture and ISO ought to be, and all these things. You can either automate the system and put it in aperture priority, or you can dial it all in manually. And so which way you decide to do is really up to you, but it's a good practice just to understand, even if you use a fully automated system, why the camera's making decisions they are. Now, I could go into a whole other set of videos, and I will, about shutter speed and aperture and ISO and what all these things mean, but suffice it to say, if you understand how all three of those things, ISO, shutter speed, aperture, work in concert, and what happens if you change one of those elements, then the other ones necessarily have to change, how all that interplays and the exposure triangle works together, then all of a sudden you're mastering every lighting condition you can come up with, and you just understand what to do when situations become tricky in the outdoors. The second of the four fundamentals of photography, as I see it, is proper camera handling techniques. Believe it or not, there's a right way to hold a camera and the wrong way to hold a camera, and the more you understand about the right way versus the wrong way, the better off you're going to be. There's a hierarchy of steadiness that you can have. The most steady way you can hold a camera is to put it on a tripod, and it's important to understand that, and understand when's the best time to use a tripod, and when are some times you can get away from using a tripod. Secondly, if using a tripod is the steadiest way to hold a camera, the least steady way is hand holding a telephoto lens when you're standing on 2 feet. Now, there's some ways that you can mitigate. You can keep your elbows in, you cradle your hand under the camera, you keep the camera pressed to your face. There's some things you can do to mitigate the amount of shake, but as a general rule, standing on 2 feet, standing upright, is the least steady way you can hold a camera. But the closer you get to the ground, so in other words, if you take a knee, you can get even more steady. If you sit on your rear end, that becomes more steady. If you lay down prone, that's even more steady. And so just understanding that, and understanding there's right ways and wrong ways to hold a camera, and understanding when to use that technique or when not to use that technique, is really important skill sets you can develop in your journey to become a better photographer. So the third out of four things I think is important to understand about the fundamentals of photography is a basic understanding of composition. Now, I have found as you're learning photography, the technical aspects of photography are usually the first things that people start to master, and master well. The understanding exposure and proper camera handling techniques. The understanding of composition, the artistic part of photography, is kind of what starts to come later. But the good news is you can learn it, and you can learn it well. I certainly have, and you know, other people I know certainly have. I don't think anyone's born with the ability to be able to just innately be good at composition. I'm sure some people are. I was not one of them. I had to learn it over time, but there's some things you can do. You know, read books about composition, look at other people's photos, understand what the rule of thirds means, and understand how to properly apply it when you're lining up a landscape photo, or whether you're even taking pictures of wildlife in the field. There's a right way and a wrong way to do it in terms of composition. And we can go a whole other video about composition, but suffice it to say, if you understand the basics of composition, you understand the basics of the rule of thirds, that's a good starting point, a good understanding of starting to think like an artist or think artistically whenever you're shooting pictures. You combine that with your knowledge of proper camera handling techniques and the knowledge of how to get the exposure right time and time again, you're going to see your pictures start to improve almost immediately. And the fourth of the fundamentals of photography that I think you'd be well advised to really understand are the qualities of light. There's good light and there's bad light when it comes to nature photography and all kinds of photography. And understanding the difference in them is really important. For example, you can take just almost any kind of mundane outdoor scene, and if you photograph it in the right time of day, it's going to have some interest. Or if you photograph it with the right angle of light, there's going to be some interest to it. So in other words, the worst time of day you can photograph for the most part, as a general rule, is in the middle of the day. But if you save your photography, your landscape photography, especially from the first couple of hours of the day, in the morning or the last couple hours in the evening when the light's low and the shadows have some direction to it and there's a little bit of shape to the shadows around the objects and everything is bathed in that golden light, it really does help improve your pictures. Or even like today, it's in the middle of the day right now. I'm looking outside and we've got overcast skies and there's no shadows at all. That's a high quality of light you can photograph. But to understand what good light is and what good light is not is a really key fundamental skill in helping you understand photography. So you add that part along with the basics understanding of composition. If you know how to line up a picture and put all the elements in the right place from a compositional standpoint and make it look right, you combine that with good quality of light, and then you combine those two skills with the technical skills of understanding proper camera handling technique and understanding the basics of how shutter speed, ISO, and aperture work together and how to get the results you desire from just a visual standpoint. You combine all four of those things together, which makes up the fundamentals of photography. Your pictures are going to start to improve almost instantly. And I hate to make it sound like it's that easy, but it really is. If you just understand the basics of exposure, the basics of composition, the basics of proper camera handling techniques and what makes good light from bad light, and combine all those things together, and more importantly, repeat that same process over and over again, your pictures are going to sing. Hey, thanks for joining me today. Hope to see you again soon. If you like what you watched and heard today, be sure to like and subscribe our videos. It really does help us out a lot. And if you want your set of free nature photography cheat sheets, head on over to hackberryfarm.com, put in your email address, and those cheat sheets will be delivered directly to your inbox. Thanks a lot.